Welcome back to my craft room and my yarn stash. It's been almost a year since I initially made the YouTube video about organizing and redecorating this room and sorting out my yarn stash in the first place. I think it's a good time to check in because I feel like I'm kind of letting both of them slip a little bit and I want to check myself, but also I kind of want to do a year in review thing. I know it's not quite a whole year, but it's January, and in the spirit of making resolutions and aspirations for my life and my crafting, I want to rethink what I'm doing here and go through everything and make sure I'm doing it the way that I want to be doing it. And I also think it would be fun to compare both the craft room and the yarn stash to where I was when I released those videos about 9 and 10 months ago. So, one of the main things that bugs me, actually, let me show you. One of the main things that bugs me about my craft room management is this closet. It's become a hoarding situation. It's become a little pocket of the house where I put all of the craft things that I don't want to think about or I'll deal with later. And it's something that I need to sort out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it today. I don't want to end this video with a to-do list. I'm going to work on this now, today, in the spirit of fresh starts and resolutions. And I think that while I do, I will talk you through what my knit year's resolutions are going to be and some details about how I plan to achieve them. I have 3 knit year's resolutions this year. That is 3 resolutions for my knitting that I'm going to try to hold myself to improve my crafts themselves, but also just the upkeep of them and my craft room and try to make everything go more smoothly. My first resolution is to maintain my stash better. Now, I ended my original yarn stash video by saying that I'm not ashamed of how much I have. I'm not upset or guilty about the amount of yarn that I'm keeping here. This is what makes me happy. I love the ability to go shopping, so to speak, in my own stash when I find a new pattern that I love, and I love the feeling of being able to come to this room and just start right away because I already have it here. I also think that this is a much more economical way of keeping yarn or being a yarn crafter, which sounds counterintuitive because I have a huge amount here and maybe I spend way more than I should sometimes, but for the most part, the bulk of this volume is because I got a really good deal on it and I got it on sale and it's a value, which is why I've decided to sacrifice the space I have in order for that economy of volume to be able to have many, many sweater quantities of value yarn or of mid-range yarns that were on sale. To me, that's so worth it because I would definitely rather have the option to start something right away when I find it based on what I already have, rather than go out and spend $150 on a sweater quantity of super nice yarn when the whim strikes. So as far as my resolution, the thing that I want to change is how I keep track of it. I like using Ravelry. I like my system of placing new yarns in this basket, which I keep in here on the floor. And that's kind of my inbox. I don't want to put away my yarns or stash them in Ravelry until I've talked about them on the podcast, because that's a big part of my podcast is what I'm working on and my acquisitions. So when I get new things, I put them in this basket. Oftentimes they don't fit in the basket because I don't film the podcast frequently enough and they overflow and then it's just a pile or like bags next to the basket and it becomes too much. So maybe part of this is to film podcasts more frequently. Either way, my maintenance of the stash is really what I'm trying to change here. So I'm hoping to stay more on top of my stash and keep track of it better in Ravelry, not get so behind. Maybe I should make a habit out of photographing these and adding them to Ravelry stash before I talk about them on the podcast. I don't know. That might improve it. Also, to not let my stash grow much bigger than this. While I'm not ashamed, I'm not guilty about the stash that I have here, I do think I'm kind of maxed out as far as space. Now maybe cleaning out this closet right now is going to make a little bit of a difference, and I'll be able to recapture some of that space for more yarn. But as it stands right now, it's kind of packed. I don't want to add too much more. So that involves not acquiring yarn faster than I can use it, because I don't want to exceed the amount that I have right now, which I'll talk about later when I can sit down at a computer and check out my Ravelry, quantities and compare that to last year's. But also that includes using up the large volumes that I have, which I think everybody says they're going to do, right? It's like a New Year's resolution and everybody's saying, oh, I'm just going to use up all the yarn that I have and I'm not going to buy more. That's not really my plan. I know I won't stick to that, but I am committing to using faster than I do right now. And a big part of my plan for that is this Centro knitting machine that I just purchased recently. I haven't opened it yet because I am going to open it here with you all on YouTube in my next video, but I think that this will help me maintain my stash better, because I know I have large quantities of value yarn in here that I bought years ago that I don't want to let go of, because I don't think that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm also not drawn to hand knit with it because it's not as fun. It's maybe not something that I necessarily want garments out of, which is most of what I knit, but I don't think it's useless, and I think I can find a purpose for it. And I think that if I can save time by using the knitting machine, then that might be the perfect compromise. Now, I'm trying to think of the knitting machine as a new technique, because I know it can be off-putting for knitters to try to use a knitting machine because that kind of undercuts your whole value and your whole craft, but I don't think so. Literally all the thing does is stockinette. So I think it's going to be a fun experiment and a new technique to try to work through some of the value large quantities that I have, and small quantities, whatever. A lot of the yarn that I probably won't ever pick up to hand knit, I think I can find a purpose for it. So while I'm not going to get to that today, part of going through my stash today is going to be to pull out all of that yarn that I think might work well with the knitting machine, so that I can try to use it when I film my upcoming knitting machine video. My second Knit Year's resolution is to aim to make more neutral and basic garments. I talked about this in my recent podcast, but I am so drawn to super colorful yarns, especially hand-dyed variegated, and like these bright, mostly pinks or blues and greens. And I have so many colorful yarns, and I have a lot of sweaters that I've made from them, and I don't tend to gravitate towards wearing super bright colors. I find my wardrobe lacking in all sorts of basics and just simple, neutral garments that can pair with a lot of things. So I'm pushing myself this year to choose more neutral and muted colors and to try to make myself more simple, basic garments that I'll get more wear out of. Not to say I'm not going to make colorful garments, but I just think that I will benefit a lot and I will get a lot more wear out of more neutrals and blacks and whites and things that I don't normally knit with, but I think I would love the finished product of. And my third Knit Year's resolution is to start keeping the project journal that I planned on starting last year. Oh, let me show you. So this was my big idea when I started my YouTube channel last year, and I was so enthusiastic about it. I actually knit the cover for this journal to be my project journal. I knit it out of some scrap yarn that I have. Oh good, it says 2022. I guess I need a new cover page. Shoot, that's funny. Okay, anyway, that's just one page. We can rip that out and start over. I guess not. Okay, so part of this is this backlog I have. I've been saving all of my ball bands, which there's a ton of, and also if I have the opportunity, if I have enough left over after my projects, I've been making mini little swatches to include in the book. And this is something that I really want to have. I think it would be so nice and such a good log, and a tactile mixed media like knitting journal is right up my alley. I just kind of got behind, and then this happened, and now I've just got this giant mess of ball bands and swatches and leftover scraps of yarn that I just am so overwhelmed and don't really want to tackle. But that's my resolution, is to tackle it, is to start keeping the project journal, including all of these projects that I made last year that I intended to put in this knitting journal. So I guess I'm keeping that cover page. And then when I get through all the stuff that I made last year, I can make a new cover page. There's so much. And like, I'm already remembering things. I'm seeing these little swatches of texture and remembering the things that I made from them. And I love this idea. I just need to execute it effectively. So hopefully the entire time I've been talking, you've been able to watch my progress with cleaning out the closet in the background. And now we can move on to something a little more interesting. All right, well, I made a big mess. There's little black threads everywhere that I need to vacuum up, but I salvaged this nice big piece of nearly new fabric in case I have to do future couch repairs. And I salvaged a bunch of this piping filling, this cording that I can use for piping on throw pillows in the future. So here's where I'm landing on the closet. Still very full, still a lot of stuff, but it's definitely much more organized. I've got some overflow for jumbo yarn and for crochet thread. Got all my extra baskets, some Christmas stuff I didn't get to this year. This is all hibernating UFOs and the extra fabric that I just pulled off of the couch cushion. Extra baskets. And of course my hamper full of finished objects. But for now, I think we're done with that. I did basically everything that I set out to do today. I tidied up the closet, I pulled apart those old couch cushions, and managed to put all those pillows in a much more space-saving spot. I think the only other thing that I had planned on doing today was to go through my stash and pull out yarns that might work well on my knitting machine for my upcoming stash busting video. Alright, so I've pulled out a bunch of yarns. And here I have a couple different colors of Lion Brand Touch of Alpaca, a bunch of different miscellaneous yarns. And this basket is entirely 3 different colorways, but varying quantities of Lion Brand Woolies hand dyed, which I got very, very cheap on a sale. So I'm going to set these aside to go with the knitting machine. We're back on Ravelry. It's been a little while since I recorded the other parts of this video before I got around to editing it and pulling this info from my stash. So it's recorded a little bit out of order, but I've taken a lot of care to go through and update all of my projects, so I think that the quantities that I used on these things are correct. Most of these projects you won't have seen yet because I actually haven't even talked about these on the podcast yet, but this is what's coming up. This is all the stuff I've been working on the last couple weeks. And I wanted to be sure that those quantities were accurate so that it will detract them from my stash correctly. Some of this is probably going to look new too. I think this is just about as accurate as it can get. So let's go ahead and export it and see what we've got. Okay, so I had recorded the whole bit completely incorrectly, so I'm going to come back and redo it. I thought that this category, skeins, meant I had 825 skeins left. So I've been going along saying, okay, the max amount of skeins I want at the end of the year is 850. And that seems like a lot. I mean, I ended up last year, according to my yarn stash video, with 623 skeins. So I added 200 during the year, which kind of blew my mind. But then I noticed this column, remaining skeins. So actually, that's how many I added, correct, but I also used like 150. So that's cool. I'm saying 50 because I know I've used a bunch of stuff during the production of the knitting machine video that I haven't logged in here yet. So I do think I used at least 15 or 20 skeins. And I'm trying to add a little wiggle room. So with the knowledge that I actually have more like 705 skeins at present, give or take, I'm going to say that 700 is my limit for next year. I think at the end of 2023, I am aiming to have fewer than 700 unused skeins in stash per my Ravelry spreadsheet. So I don't have a ton to compare this to from last year because I didn't fully use Ravelry the whole year. I kind of only started this whole process in February, March, and then I didn't really get into using it for keeping track of projects and queue and things until later in the year. At first, I only used it for the yarn stash. So it's going to be really handy to be able to look back at this spreadsheet next year and have something to compare next year's statistics to. But for right now, I'm going to call it a success that I did not accrue all that much in the last 9 months, and that I have a great launching point to kind of pursue my resolutions for this year. Thanks for tuning in today, helping me tidy up the craft room, keep an eye on my yarn stash. What are your Knit Year's resolutions? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you think mine are a little too ambitious, as I have a habit of being. I'm so glad that you joined me today. Please subscribe so you can check back next time for all of my new content, including all this knitting machine stuff that I have coming up. We'll see how much of my stash I can actually burn through pretty quick. And my other Knit Year's resolution, getting started on my mixed media knitting project journal. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye.